Welcome to the Feria TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today we are joined by David Hunter, the founder of Global Phytoplankton, one of the leading companies bringing marine phytoplankton to human and animal wellness. David's journey began nearly 2 decades ago when he discovered the extraordinary potential of the ocean's tiniest plants, phytoplankton, to impact health, sustainability, and even the way we think about nutrition. He's here to share how these microscopic organisms, responsible for producing much of the world's oxygen and fueling the marine food chain, can also play a powerful role in human vitality as the first source of nutrition for our cellular health. So, David, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here.
So, your story begins with a pivotal moment, witnessing phytoplankton profoundly change someone's health when nothing else worked. So, can you take us back to that moment? Tell us, what did you see, and what was the emotional and intellectual spark that made you decide to dedicate your life to this cause?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I'm glad to tell the story. So this happened in 2005. It happened in Vancouver Island, British Columbia, so on the west coast of Canada. And I was working at a sea farm where we were cultivating marine phytoplankton for shellfish food. So this was an organic natural food for shellfish that were destined for restaurants. Now, the person that I worked with had mesothelioma, which is a lung cancer induced by asbestos exposure. And the reason why I was hired is because he wanted to have some sales and marketing systems in place for the event of his passing, for his wife and his daughter. Now, while we were working there, as he was feeding the shellfish, he started to eat it himself. And we were kind of joking that he was like going a little bit crazy because, now he's like eating the fish food, but he had said that it kind of tasted like dulse, which is a seaweed, and he likes dulse, and he had nothing to lose, so he was going to take it, and we just thought it was just kind of a crazy thing to do. Now, a couple of weeks later, he came up to me and he had said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that like something weird is happening. My blood sugar is completely normal, and I'm a type 1 diabetic. And I'm not even taking my needles, because I'm waking up and I feel better and my blood sugar is normal." And we were just kind of joking that his cancer medication was working for his diabetes. And so it was just kind of a 2-minute conversation. We moved on to other things. Now, he had a scheduled operation at the hospital in Victoria, British Columbia, to get what is called a talking treatment. And so when you have this type of cancer in your lungs, a lot of water builds up in your lungs and then you kind of end up drowning. So they do this talking treatment kind of in the middle of it so you don't die from the drowning. And when he went into the hospital and they went inside his lungs, there was a white cotton substance along the pleural lining of his lungs, and they didn't really know what it was. And so they didn't perform the operation, but rather sent him home before they do some tests to see what was going on because they had never seen this before. And they called back a few days later and said that they were really confused, but there was absolutely zero cancer in his body, which is completely unheard of for something like mesothelioma. Now, he was saying that it was with the phytoplankton. And I don't know how this happened, but I like literally went to work one day and the phones were ringing off the hook. Every single phone line was completely jam packed. And one of the managers came up and said, "Hey, you got to start picking up the phone. Tom's cancer recovery made the front page of the newspaper." And so, literally on the front page of the newspaper, it said, "Man believes plankton stopped his rare cancer." And I don't know how it ended up getting in the newspaper, but it did. Now, so all of a sudden, like hundreds of people were calling the sea farm that we were like literally growing fish and shellfish for restaurants. And people were wanting to come by and pick up some of this phytoplankton that they saw in the newspaper because they were desperate. A lot of people with desperate health conditions were calling. And we were mandated to give it out for free. And so all these people, and we're talking about hundreds of people, okay, came to the sea farm and they picked up some phytoplankton. So, and I was like listening to some very desperate stories, like from people just whether it's fibromyalgia or Crohn's colitis or, acid reflux, just people like cancer, just people who are really desperate for anything. And so a couple of things happened after this event. This lasted for about a week and a half before it kind of calmed down. I started to take it and I had a life-changing experience in a very short period of time where pretty much almost instantly I had this extra energy, mental clarity. I had this candida rash between my legs for years. It completely disappeared within like less than 4 days. I noticed that I used to have like a nasal drip and sneeze a lot. That stopped. And then the big thing that happened to me was that I used to have like migraine headaches a lot, like probably about one or two a week on average. And they were very debilitating. I had them ever since I was a child. And all of a sudden I wasn't getting a migraine headache. And I was feeling really good. So I'm like, wow, like I mean, what's going on here? And this is really interesting. This is what Tom was talking about, how he was feeling really good. Now, about a month later, all those people that we gave that phytoplankton to came back to the sea farm looking for more. And they were telling me, and I was the guy that was dealing with them, and they were coming back with like tears in their eyes, telling me about miraculous stories of healing and like things that they were deemed impossible. Like you'd be like, how is this? How would people recover from Crohn's and colitis in like 2 weeks, or fibromyalgia, or dandruff, skin issues. It was just a little bit of everything. And um, so I witnessed this with hundreds of people, and they were willing to come back, drive long distances to get more, telling me about this. And you hear this 100 and something times, like you're like, okay. Plus, you're feeling it yourself, like you start to put two and two together. Now, a doctor, where my life changed is a doctor came and he was telling me that he couldn't believe that his patients were recovering taking this thing because I guess he saw it in the paper as well. And he told me that he believed that Tom accidentally discovered the holy grail of nutrition. And he had said what he think is going on. He goes, he goes, marine phytoplankton is the first food on the planet. Like it literally is when sunlight and seawater, the sunlight penetrates the seawater, it is immaculate conception. These plants just form out of nothing. And inside these plants, which are about the average size of 1.2 microns, they're about one third the size of a blood cell. Okay. And inside this plant is all the omegas, complete protein, potassium, magnesium, calcium, all the B vitamins, everything is in this phytoplankton in its naturally occurring form. And inside all of our cells is an engine, a little engine called the mitochondria. And that basically determines how much energy we have, like how our health of our bodies, because that's our cell, right? I mean, we're built of cells. And each cell has an engine in it called the mitochondria. And because it's so small, he thinks that it's absolutely the perfect food. And this nutrition is going directly into the mitochondria, basically awakening the mitochondria, not only to create the energy that we were all feeling, but also kind of like taking the junk out of it a little bit and getting it to communicate, which would include the immune system. So a lot of the things like the Crohn's and colitis and the fibromyalgia that I was talking about, those are what is called autoimmune diseases. So that is basically when your immune system is working against you, right? And then, it creates inflammation and pain and your body is not working right because it's confused. Well, he was saying if the mitochondria is now getting the energy from this complete pure source nutrition, now it also not only awakens the body with the energy, but it awakens the dysfunctioning immune system because now the immune system has all the energy and the antioxidants and the tools it needs to communicate and to signal to other cells like where the issues are. And then the body is able to heal itself in light speed. And because then all of a sudden, if the immune system now all of a sudden, so like you go like, well, how could like these autoimmune diseases like just disappear within 30 days and maybe they had them for 20 years? How is that? That sounds ridiculous. Well, it makes a lot of sense that if that person has that autoimmune system because they've been eating junk food and not good and like that, but they're not also getting the nutrition in the cells, then the body receives it. And then all of a sudden the immune system works perfectly. Well, it would make sense that why this would happen so fast, because now, like, the immune system is talking to each other, and, like, basically the light switch comes on. So, basically, what I kind of got out of that, it's like, wow, isn't this ironic that we have this whole supplement industry, like a lot of people, including me at the time, even though I wasn't really super into the health business, I knew about vitamins and supplements, and, I would buy my vitamin D because I live up in the north of Canada, and, I'd buy my multivitamins and all this other stuff, but not really knowing what I was taking and why, just because maybe I heard it on TV or something like that. But so we have this whole nutritional industry, and the foundation and first food on the planet was completely overlooked. The foundation of nutrition. I mean, this is the stuff that nourishes the entire ocean, including whales, that they're the size of a school bus and they live to be 100 years old. And then, all the omegas that are in krill, like they come from phytoplankton because it's the phytoplankton what the krill eat. And I go, wow, we have this whole nutritional and health industry in the world, and the foundation of nutrition was completely overlooked. And I think it was that moment from just kind of putting two and two together about what phytoplankton is and maybe what the gaps are with people, plus witnessing hundreds of miraculous recoveries, and I'm talking miraculous, plus including my own recovery. And I go, if these people even feel half as good as I feel, because I just felt like my body just awakened. And my capitalistic side of it goes, these people were willing to pay whatever to get some more, right? So it wasn't just like, oh, hey, give me some more for free. Like they were willing to drive 300 kilometers to get more and pay for it. I'm yeah, this could be a disruptor. This could save a lot of people's lives. Yeah. So, and, that was 20 years ago. And people are, probably just hearing about this for the first time, but it takes a long time to get the word out. So, here I am on this podcast sharing this, really interesting story that was bestowed upon me in 2005 and when I was 32 years old, and now I'm 52, but I can say though, we've sold hundreds of thousands of units, and we've changed hundreds of thousands of lives. And just people need to hear about it.
Amazing, amazing. That's a really, really interesting journey, David. So I'm fascinated by the process, moving from discovering this potential to actually cultivating it at scale. I mean, that's quite a huge scientific challenge on its own. So I'd like to ask, what did the early days of trying to grow these microscopic organisms sustainably look like? What were the moments you thought it might not be possible also?
Yeah, well, luckily for me, so when we were at the sea farm, so in my previous life, I was involved with bottled water, and bottled water was considered food by the American government. And so by being exposed to that, I understood about manufacturing food products and the safety protocol. So I was almost perfectly trained for this exercise. And I knew that the sea farm, when it came to government regulations, was not equipped to do this, like you said, on a scale. And I also too wanted to isolate things and all that stuff. So basically just by literally isolating different types of phytoplanktons that were discovered, I isolated a strain which I'm still using today, which is called Microchloropsis gadatana, which is a long name. But nonetheless, that seemed to be the most complete. When you broke it down, it seemed to be the most complete phytoplankton on paper. And so I was able to find a person in Spain that was growing marine phytoplankton for fish food, but it was a little bit more in line with the type of food safety protocols that we would need in order to get it approved for a human a nutrient and a pet nutrient. And so that actually took 6 years. So after this discovery, we did bring some in, we did get some made, and we did bring it into Canada as a fish food. And we wanted to just make sure before we invested a big part of our life and basically all our savings into getting this approved, we wanted to make sure that it worked. And so I gave it to people in Canada and they were getting the same results. So I knew that we were onto something, but then we had to reverse engineer it in order to get it all approved. So what we were doing is basically it's very, very clean and it's very sustainable. So literally you can buy marine phytoplankton seeds from a seed bank. There's only 2 in the world that I know of. And this particular strain of phytoplankton is not male or female. It's called a unisex microorganism. And so by giving it, so what we do is we put microfiltered ocean water into a series of tubes, and those tubes are always consistently circulated. And basically you drop this invisible seed in there and give it some CO2. And in Spain, there's a lot of sunlight. So the combination of the CO2 and the sunlight, this phytoplankton multiplies by itself, and it can multiply on the multiply. So just to give you an example, 350 milligrams of pure phytoplankton powder has 90 billion phytoplankton plants. Like only 350 milligrams, 90 billion. So this set of tubes was about half the size of a soccer field, or a football field, as you would call it in Nigeria. I'm sure. Like, so it's like the amount of phytoplankton that is in this set of tubes is, you can't, the zeros would be, a few kilometers or miles long, right? And so after 3 months, and again, microfiltered ocean water, so all the heavy metals and all these things, are not in the thing. We test it, we do the highest level food safety testing. And basically, no, we don't need any fertilizers or pesticides or anything. So what is the product after? Is that after 3 months, the phytoplankton multiplies so much that when we take it out of the tubes, it's thick like ketchup, and it's very vibrant green. And then what we do is we take all the moisture out of it and freeze it at the same time. And that we bring it down to less than 3% moisture. So then the bacteria can't grow. And then we freeze it and then we grind it into a powder. And then that powder is shelf stable. And that's the powder that I'm talking about. So then, and then of course we do all the because we're dealing with food, we do all the high level food safety, the protocols and all that stuff. But I'm really proud that not only is it super clean, but it's like, I think, like, honestly, what we've done is we've perfected pure nutrition. Like, this is literally the purest, most concentrated, foundational form of nutrition on the planet, with no fertilizers, no pesticides, grown in an enclosed, controlled environment. And when we're growing it, oxygen is our exhaust. So we have pure oxygen coming out of our stacks. And then we put more phytoplankton back into the ocean, because there's obviously some residuals when we're done, and we've just pumped that back into the ocean, which is naturally occurring in that ocean. So it's a very sustainable operation too. So we're kind of like, not like krill, for example, to pick on krill a little bit. Krill oil is a huge commodity all over the world. Well, these are diesel vessels going into the ocean, scooping up a food source for fish. You know what I mean? And so, but we don't need to do that anymore, because the omegas that the krill get, the reason why they have those omegas is because they're eating the phytoplankton, because the original source of omegas is phytoplankton. And not only you're going to get your omegas, but you're also going to get your proteins, and you're going to get your magnesiums and calciums and your Bs and the antioxidants that are on top of it. So it's just a huge upgrade. So yeah, but that's and luckily, you know what? I just got lucky. I got surrounded by really good people that know how to do this. And that's what you do when you build a team. You you get people that are better than you at certain things. And it's kind of like, if you're playing soccer, right? You have your center, you've got your left winger, your right winger, your center field, your defense and your goalie, they all have to work together.
Yeah, oh wow, that's really, really interesting. So, you've mentioned that phytoplankton nourishes the body differently than any food or supplement. So, in simple terms, for people who are not, too familiar with the biology behind it, could you tell us what it is actually doing at the cellular level that makes it so unique?
Yeah. Well, I think that why it's unique than anything else is literally, the first thing is, it is the only first food. There's only one first. There's only one pole position. That is phytoplankton, and that is immovable. So for it to be divinely formulated by God, or whatever, whatever you want to choose, that started this planet, this was the plant chosen to be the beginning of the food chain. So that is immovable. So if it was chosen to be the beginning of the food chain, it obviously has to be a little bit more concentrated and complex than anything else. So we kind of say that it's not necessarily, and I'm not saying that spirulina, chlorella, blue-green algae, broccoli, spinach, or kale are not nutritious. I'm not saying that at all. If you eat those things and you eat really cleanly, you will have, you will live a good life. They're like, I'm not saying that they're not nutritious, but these type of results that people are getting is way bigger than anybody. Like, I wouldn't be in business if these results were already done from, say, commodity-based algaes. Now, again, why is it doing this? I'm not too sure. I mean, we honestly, like, we're still diving into it. We don't know 100% for sure. There might even be something in phytoplankton that maybe we haven't discovered yet, and we can't discover it because we don't know what to look for, because it might be completely unknown. There might not be a test for that, because it might be an unknown peptide that we're thinking that it might be a peptide, which is kind of like a form of protein. But what we do know is, from the tests that we have done, there is what's called a cell signaling effect. There is something that is going on that seems to just ignite the immune system. Now, is it a combination of things? Is it just one thing? Again, we don't know, but what we do know, though, is that people respond to it. And so the body must recognize it. It's kind of like, going back to a homecoming, that the body must know what the phytoplankton is because of the results. And I'll just give you, like, kind of another thing that's kind of like where this is a little bit different. Okay. So my mom passed away from cancer in 1993. And that is a big driving force for what I'm doing, because, like, that left a big hole in our family. She was the glue that kind of put our family together. When she passed away, like, my family kind of, like, didn't talk, like, not that they were fighting, but she was the one calling everybody, getting everybody together. Right. And then when this happened at the sea farm, this was a big motivating factor for me. So after, when I was doing those tests I was talking about with the regulatory, I did some tests with the Atlantic Cancer Institute in New Brunswick, Canada. And we got a hold of breast cancer and colon cancer cell lines, okay? Which is what cancer researchers use in order to validate materials to look for things to help with cancer, okay? And we put this phytoplankton into those Petri dishes, okay? Both colon cancer and breast cancer. And in both cases, okay, the cancer cells died 100% within 3 days. And the lady who did the test, who was part of the Atlantic Cancer Institute, okay, she was a 25-year veteran at the Atlantic Cancer Institute. And she told me that in 25 years, she had never put an organic compound into a cancer cell line and see 100% cell death. Completely annihilated the cancer cell lines. So there is something in there, in that phytoplankton, that is not in other foods. Now, you would say, okay, well, if this is so great, and, why do I not know about this and all that stuff? Well, the amount of money and time it would take to get this approved, it would be such a disruptor. Dave Hunter from Canada is not the guy to do that. I do not have the funds. I do not have the team to do that. So instead of, like, trying to, and I wanted to get this to the people. And so what I did is I just licensed it as a multivitamin to make it just easy on regulatory. Because also, too, is if I invested all that money into cancer, well, this thing would be $5,000 for a dose. People would have the science to make them feel warm and fuzzy, but they're going to pay $5,000 a month for it, because they're going to have to pay for the $1 million and the 30 years it would have taken me to get it to market. So we just put it as a multivitamin, and now we charge only $90 for it, because we don't have all that R&D into it. And we sell it as a multivitamin with a money back guarantee. And we just let the results of the product do the talking. And we said, people, like, we've sold enough that, luckily for us now, because we have a business foundation as well, that a lot of these recoveries and testimonials and anecdotes are very well documented on the internet. So this is not just Dave Hunter on this podcast, saying this one-off thing. Like, there's 20 years now of evidence to show that there's something very unique happening here. Like, this was just not a one-off event.
Great. So that was really interesting. So let's talk about the bigger picture. Phytoplankton produces most of Earth's oxygen. So how does your work with human health connect to this enormous environmental goal? And why is that connection so important for the future?
Well, I mean, I just think that, you know what, like I said earlier, like phytoplankton is just checking off all the boxes, right? Like, not only is it the first food, but just for an example, like, when we make it, we're producing oxygen, we're producing, like a green natural compound. Now, here's the other thing too, is that, phytoplankton is now getting studied as a organic fertilizer for food to re-nourish the soil. So then if we're growing vegetables, those vegetables have more nutritional power in them. There's a phytoplankton that you can feed to cows because, there's this whole thing about methane and cows farting and all this other stuff, right? Well, there's a phytoplankton that's being studied right now that they can give to cows, and it neutralizes the methane that comes of the cow's bum. Now, not only that, you're actually adding more nutrients into the cow, which is going to produce a better immune system for the cow, so that maybe they're not going to need all these antibiotics and all these other things, and the cow is going to be healthier. So there's a big there like, and I'm not really in that part of it, but I know I'm kind of connected to it, so I know about all these things that are going on. And I think that we're going to see, hopefully in my lifetime, I do want to see it, because I am a pioneer in the human health and the pet thing. I think that this is going to be a new economy, like once people kind of figure out what this is really doing. And a lot of places like Saudi Arabia and like desert communities and stuff like this are looking at growing phytoplankton in the desert as well. So like imagine then if they're able to bring in ocean water and grow phytoplankton for say like the land, and then basically flood the land with this kind of like oceanic phytoplankton, and then it rejuvenates the soil, and you're creating oxygen while you're growing it, you know I mean, there's no real downside to it, you know what I mean? And I hope that I'm not going to be part of that, like maybe like as a consultant or something like that, but like, this is the stuff going on even, where you are. There's an ocean around you. Be a perfect place to grow, instead of like, we're probably going to have to transition from oil sooner or later, you know? And
Wow.
there's even companies that are looking at phytoplankton as a biodiesel. There's a company actually that's invested over $1 billion looking at phytoplankton for a biodiesel.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's indeed checks all the boxes. So, David, there's a common question I like to ask all the guests that I interview here on this podcast. So, as you may already know, part of the theme of this podcast is centered around innovation. So, for that reason, I'll ask, as relates to your work and your experience bridging the ocean's smallest organism with human vitality, what does innovation truly mean to you?
Well, you know what? I think sometimes innovation, in my case, this innovation came from a fluke or an accident, and sometimes I find that sometimes the answers are the simple ones. And that's kind of why I said it's like sometimes it's overlooked. So here was this accident that happened at the sea farm that happened to me, that since I was like, I had food experience, basically has started, there's a lot of people now that have jobs because of my efforts, you know, and people are getting funding around the world because of my efforts, because I was one of the main guys who unlocked phytoplankton, and it's now had some spinoff. So, I mean, obviously, like, you can look at phones, like they were a big innovation, you know what I mean? And, there's been, electric cars or whatever, they're like we're having all these new innovations. But one thing that we all have in common is that, we all need nutrition and we all need to live, and I don't think that disease is natural. There's obviously something going on. So I'm just hoping that this innovation, am I like currently right now we have the best, but you know what? Maybe that, in my lifetime, when my time is time to pass the torch, then a whole new group of people and engineers and scientists and biologists are going to find things or new phytoplanktons, because there's more than just one phytoplankton. Um, it kind of spin it like things spin off, right? So I am hoping that again it'll create a whole new set of economies, really, and sometimes it just takes one person to unlock something, a new way of looking at things that unlocks multiple different things. So that's kind of how I see innovation, is that it always takes that one guy to kind of figure something out. However, mine happened by accident, but my accidental discovery now has spun off, and I don't even know how many people are making a living and I'm getting employed because of that event that happened at the sea farm. I would say probably close to 500 or more people that get a paycheck every 2 weeks and feed their families because of this event now.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, that's quite commendable, David. It's really, really, really an honor to have you on the show. So, finally, for our listeners who are inspired to learn more and perhaps begin their own journey with phytoplankton, what's a resource that you have for them, or particular way they can begin to learn more and maybe get to use phytoplankton too by themselves.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, so if you're listening to this and this resonates with you, you need to try it. I think like our mission is that everybody needs to try phytoplankton at least once. If this resonates with you, this is not, you're not going to just go, oh yeah, this is okay. Like if you resonate with it and your body responds to it, it will have a life-changing impact on your body, and you will have a nutritional foundation. I'm 52 years old. I'm on zero medications. I have no health restrictions at all. Zero. And when I started, I did. And I'm not the only one. And so there's a website that you can go to. It's called usagpa.com. So again, it's usagpa.com. And GPA means Global Phytoplankton Alliance. Now, on that website, like if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a 25% off offer on your first order. And I also want to let you know that we have a 30-day money back, empty bottle money back guarantee. So if it doesn't work for you, then I'm the one taking the risk, because I always say, I don't want your hard earned money if you're not going to get value from it. Everything that, you can do your own research and all that, but I just encourage, if you're listening to it, just to give it a try. And because it's more than just, this is more just a sales pitch. Like this, like if you're feeling any of things stuff that I saying, I just really encourage you to give it a try, and you can get your first time discount, and we can ship around the world. And if you're, say, from I know that this is like a global podcast, so there's a phone number on there you can reach out, and we'll make sure that you get it. So usagpa.com, go check it out.
Wonderful, wonderful. David, it's been a really interesting and insightful conversation with you, and I am excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ezekiel. I really appreciate you giving me the chance to tell people about this.